The object of this video is to show you how to start stamp collecting. That's hard to say, but basically this was a sort of a hobby that Riley and I got into as kids, and there were many of us in the town of Drain who enjoyed stamp collecting. It's coming back again. It can be very financially rewarding, but the biggest thing is to learn about history. So the first thing you do is figure out, do you want to concentrate on world history or U.S. history? So world can mean the whole world from the beginning of when stamps were made. The object is to find the perfect stamps. And so that is a learning process that you'll get into. But first thing you do is find a way. You can find it on the internet. You can find it somewhere else. Find a way to purchase a stamp album. Sometimes you find them in your grandparents' closets because they did it as kids and now they don't. And you can find some rare finds in those old books. But get a book. And I would suggest to start out small. Now these are world books, and your object is to get a book that has pictures in them. It gives you a little information, like Malaysia had that kind of a name. So when you're looking at stamps, a good thing to do is get a list, which you can do on the internet and print out, a list of what you would find on the stamp versus what it really is in our language. So that's what you're doing, is in these stamp albums you will be finding a stamp that looks like this. Okay, and some stamp albums have a blank line across. That would be filled in the real stamp, but that blank line keeps somebody from copying this stamp and making a false stamp. There are those kinds of stamps that you would find. Okay, so let's move on then to the other area where that you're going to start collecting stamps. Like I said, you might find an old stamp album and it's full of stamps. Check them. Make sure they belong where they are. I don't know how many times I found an old stamp album and people have put it in the wrong country. So that's where you start learning. I prefer world. Riley prefers U.S. They both have their challenges, and they're both fun. So you can take, and what I do is take oddball stamps and I put them in a little box, and that's what I'm going to look at later. These are duplicates from a couple of albums that I have. So I just put them in there. I'll have duplicates available for other people that want to start collecting. This is how you used to be able to buy it. Stamps, they would come this way, and then these stamps would be spelled out as to who they were, what they meant, how much they cost at that time. So this was done. This was purchased, this whole book, for $1.50 on February the 20th, 1953. Now, it's important for you to record this kind of information because your grandkids or great-grandkids or whatever find this fascinating. So you can also do stamps. If you are working for a business or you have friends who get mail from out of the country, if you're wanting to do world, then this is the way to do it. Collect these stamps. Don't just rip the stamp off the page. You're either going to soak it or you're going to trim outside the little bumpy line here on the edge. That's called perforations. You do not want to cut the perforations. That destroys the stamp. Okay? So here we have already placed a stamp. in the water, and we're soaking it so that we can pull off the stamp. So what you're using is tweezers. You can do it either way. You can either hold the paper with the tweezers, or you can use the tweezers to pull off the stamp. And the whole object is to be able to pull off the stamp. These two are actually still left together, so you want to leave them together, okay? And they will come right off that paper, and you turn it upside down on a towel. You're going to let this dry, and it may curl a little bit. You can place it under a book. You can get a stamp press if you want to spend the money for it. Somehow you can flatten this stamp out so that it's completely flat. The important reason, why would you think you had to place this upside down on a towel? Well, because there's still glue on the back. And the first time I did this, my brother Riley didn't tell me to place it face down. And I placed them all face up so I could look at the pretty stamps. And then I had a hard time getting them off the towel. So, lesson learned. All right, so when you're doing stamp collecting, you're not going to know all the answers. There's going to be questions. So one of the things that we do is have our laptop with us when we're working with the stamps, and we actually go online, and you can type in green Zanzibar stamp, and every green Zanzibar stamp would show up on the internet. There's pictures of them. Sometimes you can tie in. Sometimes we don't know where they belong because there's no country on it. So you just describe the stamp as well as you can. Always put stamp at the end of the description. That way the computer knows you're not looking for a towel. Okay? So last, you're going to... Okay, so the last thing is to eventually work up to a big album. And this one was one that I've had for years. I honestly don't remember where I got it, whether somebody gave it to me or whether it was something that I bought at a yard sale. You can find these sometimes at yard sales. But the thing that you're going to need are hinges. And you can buy these by the thousand. And they're just little hinges. Sometimes they're going to be flat. Sometimes they'll be folded. And so you'll place the small side on the back of the stamp and then the wide side in your book. Sometimes, especially with U.S. stamps, the perforations are really important to know whether you've got something good or not, whether you have something that is like every other one you found. We use these a lot, and it's just a perforation guide. So when you get a big album like this, oh, and of course I open one that doesn't have very much on the page, but what I've done is add where I knew that there was a continuation. Sometimes your book only shows a few pictures of the same stamp, and you need to place all of yours. So you can do it this way, or you can do what I've also done. Let me see if I can find one now. Where that I add pages just with typing paper and or paper that of your choice. And I put in the name of the country. Sometimes I'll find a lot of stamps, and so I'll put unknown because I don't know what year they came from. Sometimes I'll put all of it together because I don't want to take it apart because there's all kinds of really cool things that you find on them. So sometimes I put the year if I know what year it is. So those are things that you can do even in a small book, is start setting up your albums and then go on to a larger one when you're ready.